You ever notice how some people treat their trauma like a pet chihuahua? They carry it around, feed it, talk to it, let it piss all over their goals, and then wonder why no one wants to come near them. It's always yapping. My childhood was a mess. No one ever loved me. My ex ruined me. Look, your pain is valid, but if your trauma has a tighter grip on your life than your own damn hands, then congratulations, you've officially outsourced your destiny to your dysfunction. People out here will pay $7 for an oat milk latte and post quotes about self-love, but won't spend 7 minutes looking in the mirror and being honest with themselves. You want to heal? You want to rise? Then buckle up. Because healing is not sipping tea in a bubble bath while chanting affirmations. It's standing in front of the wreckage of your life and admitting, I built this trash heap, time to clean house. And that's where this book comes in. Because you can't manifest joy if you're too emotionally constipated to feel it. Buy Yourself the Damn Flowers by Tam Kaur isn't a book. It's a mirror. A brutal, unfiltered, hold it to your face until you squirm kind of mirror. It doesn't care about your excuses. It doesn't want to hear about how you're just figuring things out. It's here to tell you, your healing is your job, not your ex's, not your parents, not your therapist's, yours. Tam Kaur is not here to coddle you. She's been through the emotional gutter, betrayal, heartbreak, self-hate, and every dark pit that comes with being a woman who gave too much and got nothing in return. But instead of using that pain as a forever crutch, she turned it into a sword, and this book is her handing you the blade. Tam is a British Punjabi poet, writer, and self-made powerhouse who's turned her own breakdown into a blueprint. Her work blends poetry and personal essays with the rage and resilience of someone who finally stopped asking the world to love her and started loving herself so loudly it echoed. This isn't your grandma's self-help book. There are no softly whispered mantras here. It's war paint, it's raw, it's real. It's for the woman who's tired of being tired and done being done. Now, before we dive into the blood and guts of this thing, let's get something straight. Disclaimer. This video falls under the Fair Use Act. We're using this content for educational purposes. This isn't a summary. It's a surgical analysis designed to punch you in the gut and then offer you a hand back up. It's not enough to know what's in the book. We're going to tear it apart, challenge it, and build something better with it. If you're looking for someone to gently guide you toward healing, maybe go buy a scented candle. But if you're ready to finally drag your self-worth out of the dirt and stop romanticizing your rock bottom, welcome. It's time to talk about the chapters, and trust me, they don't pull punches. Welcome to Mindful Reads Hub. Let's get started. Unlearning self-love myths. If you think self-love is all about lighting a candle, doing a face mask, and telling yourself you're a queen or king, congratulations. You've officially been brainwashed by Instagram therapists and Pinterest quote boards. Most people have, and it's not your fault. Society fed you a steady diet of self-care that looks great in reels but does absolutely nothing to excavate the damage that's been rotting under your surface since your teens. You don't love yourself. You tolerate yourself. There's a difference. One is survival. The other is power. And Tam? She knows the difference because she spent her life being taught the same lies you did, that if you just work hard enough, look good enough, or please others enough, you'll earn love, even your own. That's the first myth this book takes a sledgehammer to. That love, especially self-love, is something conditional, that you're only worthy of kindness when you fixed yourself, performed enough, or finally stopped being too much. Tam grew up in a space, like many of us, where worth was transactional, where you earned praise by disappearing, by shutting up, by blending in and being nice. And when she finally cracked under the weight of that quiet obedience, what was left was a woman who looked successful on the outside, but was spiritually bankrupt on the inside. This section of the book is a hard slap in the face to the idea that self-love is some cute little Pinterest project. It's not a spa day. It's not a luxury, it's a fucking revolution, and it starts with unlearning, violently, everything that made you believe being broken meant being unworthy. Tam dismantles that internal voice that says, you're too damaged to be loved. She doesn't give it a microphone, she doesn't even give it the dignity of a rebuttal. She calls it out as bullshit. a lie rooted in trauma, a toxic echo of people who didn't know how to love you properly and trained you to believe their inability was somehow your fault. And let's be real, we've all internalized that nonsense. We've all had moments where we looked in the mirror and saw nothing but mess. Moments we tried to fake it till we make it, but deep down felt like frauds. Because nobody told us that true self-love doesn't look like confidence. It looks like compassion, not I am perfect, but I am still worthy, even when I'm a goddamn mess. What Tam lays out, and what most wellness influencers won't tell you, is that self-love is often ugly. It's crying on the bathroom floor and still choosing not to call the person who broke you. It's looking at the wreckage of your emotional life and deciding, yeah, I caused some of this, but I also get to clean it up. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You can't meditate your way out of abandonment issues. You can't journal your way out of generational trauma. You have to confront it, rip it out by the roots, get bloody. And Tam isn't here to make it gentle. She's here to make it real. She writes about feeling broken, like there's no whole version of herself to return to. That's relatable, because most of us don't need to get back to who we were. That person never existed. We're not rebuilding, we're building for the first damn time. And maybe that's not sad, maybe that's liberating. This section isn't motivational fluff, it's emotional excavation. Tam lays down a foundation that real self-love doesn't come after healing. It creates healing. You don't have to earn it, you just have to stop believing the people who taught you you weren't worthy of it in the first place. Let's be clear. This isn't about blaming your parents, your culture, or your ex. It's about understanding the system that made you think love was something you had to deserve. Once you see the machine, you can dismantle it. You can stop participating in your own erasure. If you're still clinging to the idea that self-love will feel good, this section will piss you off. Good. That means it's working. That means you're waking up. Because the truth is, loving yourself often feels like betrayal. Betraying your old self, betraying the people who taught you to shrink, betraying every internal voice that said, you don't matter unless you're useful to someone else. Burn it down, start again. That's Tam's message, and that's the only kind of love that will actually save you. Key takeaway, self-love isn't earned, it's reclaimed. And if your version of self-love doesn't feel like rebellion, it's probably just self-denial dressed up as healing. Favorite quote, you don't need to be fixed, you need to be found by yourself. The self-love roller coaster. You want to know the ugly truth about self-love? It's not linear. It's not a straight line to enlightenment. It's not a one-way escalator to healing. It's a fucking roller coaster, and most of you are hopping on with no seatbelt, one eye closed, and a mouth full of denial. 1 week you're journaling about boundaries. The next week you're drunk, texting the same person who shattered you like a dropped wine glass. Sound familiar? Good. Sit down, because this is where we rip the fake positivity off like a bandage. Tam Kaur doesn't write like someone trying to get you to like her. She writes like someone who's trying to save your life, and doesn't care if it hurts your feelings. This section of the book, it's not another motivational TikTok telling you to drink lemon water and cut off toxic friends. It's a reality check wrapped in emotional whiplash. Because falling off the self-love wagon, it's not a failure, it's the fucking process. Tam talks about it like someone who's been through it, and spoiler, she has. She confesses that she didn't always get it right, that some days she preached healing and spent the night crying over someone who didn't text back, that she said, I choose me in public, and then sat with her own loneliness in silence at night. And that, right there, is what makes this so powerful, because she exposes the lie that self-love is constant. It isn't. It's chaotic. It's inconsistent. And you're going to screw it up more than once. And that doesn't mean you're weak. That means you're human. The strongest people don't stay on the path. They crawl back to it over and over with their pride in their teeth. Because real self-love isn't pretty. It's gritty. It's forgiving yourself for every relapse into self-doubt, every return to the familiar pain, every I knew better moment that still happened. You don't need a vision board. You need a spine. This is where Tam Kaur digs in with tools. Not airy-fairy mantras, but practical, ruthless, real tools. You don't learn to love yourself by reading about it. You learn by doing it. even when you don't believe you deserve it yet. That means waking up and writing that gratitude list even if you feel numb. That means looking in the mirror and not flinching when the voice in your head calls you ugly, unworthy, unlovable. That means dragging yourself out of bed and into the gym or the bath or the bookstore, not because it fixes everything, but because you're worth trying for. And no, this isn't some toxic hustle culture either. This isn't just push through. This is about choice. You choose yourself, not once, not just on a Sunday after a breakdown, but daily, hourly, especially when the world and your own mind is screaming that you're not enough. You respond with action, not perfection, not even progress, just presence. Tam even calls out the fact that some of you are using self-love as an excuse. You call it a journey, but you're actually stuck in a loop. You blame healing for your stagnation. You call isolation growth when it's just avoidance. You say, I'm setting boundaries, when really you're building walls because you're scared to trust anyone again. Enough. Call it what it is. Fear. Self-love without accountability is just self-indulgence, and that's where most people get stuck. They want self-love to be a warm hug, not a confrontation with their worst habits. They want growth to feel like a victory, not a funeral. But here's the truth. Every version of you that betrayed your own worth, that version has to die, and mourning that version will break your heart before it frees it. Tam's writing doesn't beg for your attention, it demands your effort. If you want to start your self-love journey, stop talking about it and build rituals that back it up. Create a system that supports the person you're becoming. That's not toxic productivity, that's emotional survival. Do what future you will thank you for, not what present you find comfortable. You don't fall off the wagon because you're broken. You fall off because healing is heavy, because the path isn't paved and half the time you're walking it blindfolded. But if you can keep going, keep standing up, keep showing up, then you're not failing, you're becoming. And that's more radical than any affirmations you can pin to your vision board. So the next time you relapse into an old version of yourself, don't ask, why am I like this? Ask, how can I choose differently today? Not forever, not even tomorrow, just today. Because that's what this journey really is. Self-love isn't some shiny goal you hit. It's a decision you repeat until it becomes who you are. Key takeaway. Self-love is not a destination. It's a daily rebellion. If your self-love practice doesn't challenge you to break patterns and face your shit, then it's not love. It's avoidance dressed in affirmations. Favorite quote, I don't want you to love yourself perfectly. I want you to fight for yourself, even when you don't. Rebuilding after heartbreak. Let's get this straight. Heartbreak isn't a tragedy. It's a fucking detox. That person you lost, they didn't just leave. They exited your life like a toxin being purged from your bloodstream. And sure, it hurts. Withdrawal always does. But if your body shakes after letting them go, that doesn't mean they were your medicine. It means they were your addiction. Tam doesn't write about heartbreak like it's something cute to cry about while rewatching rom-coms. She talks about it like war, because that's what it is. A war between the part of you that knows you deserve better and the part of you that's still clinging to the fantasy version of the person who broke you. And you can't rebuild yourself while holding on to the rubble. You've got to let the whole house burn, even if you helped build it. She doesn't glorify the pain. She walks you through it. She owns it. The numbness, the rage, the moments when you try to call them just to hear the version of you that only existed in their presence. And then she drags you out of that emotional swamp and says, enough. Because there's a difference between grieving and drowning, and some of you are calling your stagnation healing when really you're just waiting for someone to come back and make you forget you ever needed to heal. You want to rebuild after heartbreak? Then stop looking for closure in someone who gave you silence. Stop trying to rewrite history to justify their mistreatment. Stop believing that your pain makes you poetic. It makes you human, but only if you use it to grow. Otherwise, you're just bleeding on everything and calling it art. Tam gets personal here. She shows the brutal honesty of what it feels like when someone you gave your all to doesn't even bother to return your pieces. And you know what she does instead of begging for them back? She builds something new, from scratch, from her own damn ribcage. Because sometimes healing doesn't look like restoration, it looks like reinvention. The people who break us often teach us our strongest lessons, but only if we're paying attention. Otherwise, we repeat the cycle, and Tam refuses to be on repeat. She takes her heartbreak and alchemizes it into strength. She turns pain into poetry, but not the kind you post for attention. The kind that changes you, quietly, permanently. And here's the truth you've been avoiding. It was never really about them. The whole time, it was about the version of you that believed they were the best you could get. That version, she's dead now. And your job isn't to resuscitate her. Your job is to bury her with grace and rise as someone who finally understands that loneliness isn't the enemy. Settling is. You want transformation? Good. Then stop romanticizing your ruin. Burn the letters, block the number, rip the playlist to shreds. And while you're at it, stop writing passive-aggressive quotes on Instagram and call it healing. Real healing doesn't need an audience. It just needs a decision. I will never betray myself again just to keep someone who wouldn't bleed for me. Tam doesn't leave you with just pain. She gives you tools. And more importantly, perspective. That you can rebuild a life where you are the centerpiece, not the accessory. That loving yourself deeply means letting go of the people who only love the broken pieces they could control. So if you're still sitting in your room crying over a ghost, understand this. Grief is sacred, but so is growth. And if you're doing one without the other, then you're not healing, you're hiding. Key takeaway. You don't rebuild by fixing what shattered. You rebuild by becoming someone who would never again give the hammer to the wrong hands. Your healing isn't a comeback, it's a complete transformation. Favorite quote, I stopped asking them why they left and started asking myself why I stayed. Embracing solitude. So here's the thing, no one likes to admit. Most people can't stand being alone because it forces them to listen to the one person they've spent their whole life avoiding, themselves. Solitude isn't scary because of the silence. It's scary because in the silence, there's no one left to blame for your unhappiness. No distractions, no scapegoats, just you, your patterns, and the echo of all your unhealed wounds. That's why people jump from relationship to relationship like emotional couch surfers, because solitude is where the truth lives. And most people don't want the truth. They want a warm body to distract them from it. Tam Kaur didn't learn this the easy way. She was cracked open by betrayal, abandonment, and the brutal loneliness that follows when you finally stop settling for crumbs and cut off every fake friend, toxic ex, and energy-leeching vampire in your life. The thing no one tells you is that healing often starts with isolation, not as punishment, but as purification. You clear the noise, not because you want peace, but because you need clarity. And clarity? That shit doesn't come in the group chat. It comes when you're curled up alone, confronting the parts of yourself you keep outsourcing to other people. What Tam does in this part of the book is flip the script on solitude. Not only does she stop treating it like exile, she starts treating it like empowerment. She gives herself a year, 1 full year, no dating, no entertaining anyone who doesn't offer more than a dopamine hit and disappointment. Just her, herself, and the uncomfortable but liberating process of rebuilding her identity without leaning on anyone else's validation. Here's what people get wrong. They think confidence is loud, that it's walking into a room and commanding attention. But real confidence is silent. It's the calm that comes from knowing you've already faced yourself and lived to tell the story. It's waking up alone and not panicking. It's choosing solitude not because you have to, but because you fucking want to. Because you finally realize that your peace is too expensive to rent out to people who treat your heart like a doormat. Tam's story isn't glamorous. It's not a montage of yoga, smoothies, and girl bossing. It's gritty. It's full of setbacks. And that's why it works. Because she makes it clear. Being alone doesn't mean being empty. It means you've made space. And space? That's where your real self shows up. Not the version you curated for approval. Not the version shaped by rejection. The one underneath it all. The one that's been waiting for you to stop abandoning her. She talks about rebuilding her confidence, not with external wins, but with internal shifts. Waking up on time. Saying no without explaining, wearing clothes that made her feel powerful even if no one else saw them, celebrating her own damn birthday like she was the queen of her own kingdom. Because guess what? You can't expect someone else to love you like royalty when you treat yourself like an unpaid intern in your own life. And here's the savage part. Most people don't fear loneliness, they fear accountability. Because being alone means you can't blame anyone else for the chaos anymore. You either face it or repeat it. And if you keep attracting emotionally unavailable people, maybe it's time to ask why your comfort zone is built on rejection. Tam doesn't hand you affirmations in this section. She hands you a challenge to stop mistaking company for connection, to stop confusing being wanted with being respected, to stop treating solitude like a sentence when it's actually the setup for your breakthrough. The truth is, solitude is where your confidence is born. Not because you're performing for the world, but because you're finally showing up for yourself. And once you do that, once you realize you're complete on your own, no one can manipulate you with attention again. Key takeaway: solitude isn't a punishment, it's a power move. If you can be alone and still feel whole, there's not a single person who can use your loneliness against you ever again. Favorite quote: being alone wasn't a curse, it was the classroom where I met the most honest version of myself. Celebrating self-love. Let's talk about Valentine's Day. The holiday most people either fake enthusiasm for or pretend to hate while secretly crying into a pizza box. We've been sold this idea that love is something that only counts when someone else gives it to you in the form of roses, a caption, or an overpriced dinner. It's capitalism cosplaying as affection. You've got people out here measuring their worth by how many chocolates they receive, as if being someone's backup plan for a reservation means you're finally valid. But Tam doesn't play that game. She doesn't rewrite Valentine's Day. She hijacks it. And what she does is bigger than reclaiming a date on a calendar. It's about destroying the myth that love only matters when it's coming from someone else. She makes the day about herself, fully, radically, shamelessly. She buys herself the damn flowers, throws herself a solo date, and makes herself feel so seen and honored you'd think she was the one getting proposed to. And maybe she is, just not by someone else. She's saying yes to herself, loudly. This isn't self-indulgence, this is rebellion. Because society has trained women especially to sit and wait. Wait to be picked, wait to be seen, wait to be worthy. What Tom does here is say, no more. You don't wait to be celebrated. You don't wait to be someone's reason. You become your own. But it's not just about a day. It's about the message underneath it. When you make Valentine's Day, or any day, about yourself, you're sending a message to every cell in your body. I am not a placeholder. I am the prize. And once you live like that, you start acting like that. You stop tolerating mediocrity dressed as affection. You stop begging for crumbs and calling it connection. And this is where boundaries come in, the real ones. Not the fake spiritual ones you write in your notes app, but never apply. Real boundaries are acts of violence against your old self. They are the door slamming in the face of every person, habit, and situation that keeps dragging you back to your low standards. And yes, they're uncomfortable. You will feel guilty. You will feel like you're being mean. Because when you've been trained to abandon yourself for the comfort of others, choosing yourself will feel like betrayal. Good. That means you're doing it right. Tam doesn't just talk about boundaries in theory, she walks them out in blood and experience. She talks about people who drained her, disrespected her, and discarded her, and how, every time she let them stay, she taught herself she didn't matter, until one day, she just didn't have the stomach for it anymore. She drew the line. And not the kind of line you erase the moment someone apologizes. The kind of line that becomes a wall, a standard, a promise to yourself that you will never again lower your value for someone else's convenience. And that's the real heart of this section. It's not just about feeling good, it's about becoming someone who refuses to participate in their own disrespect. You stop asking people to treat you better and start becoming someone they can't mistreat. Because you've set the terms. And those terms are non-negotiable. So the next time a holiday rolls around and you feel like shit because no one posted you or bought you anything, pause and ask yourself, have I made myself the main character in my life? Or am I still living in someone else's storyline, hoping to be cast as worthy? Tam's not teaching you how to survive loneliness. She's teaching you how to build a life so full of your own presence that anyone else becomes a bonus. not a lifeline. You become your own best gift, your own validation, your own damn Valentine. And once you master that, the whole world starts treating you differently because you finally decided to treat yourself like you matter. Key takeaway: if you only feel loved when someone else gives you permission, you've already lost. Love isn't a holiday. It's how you show up for yourself every day, without apology, without exception. Favorite quote: I stopped waiting to be chosen. I chose myself and made it the best decision I've ever made. Dating with self-respect. Let's get this out of the way. If you are still dating people hoping they will fix what your childhood broke, close the dating app and open a damn journal. You're not looking for a partner, you're looking for a therapist with benefits. And until you realize that dating without self-respect is just self-destruction dressed in mascara and desperation, you will keep choosing people who mirror your unhealed wounds instead of your healed standards. Tam doesn't sugarcoat this. She doesn't pat you on the head and tell you, you'll find your person someday. What she says is harder and more freeing. Stop trying to be chosen. Choose your fucking self again and again until it becomes the only relationship that's non-negotiable. Until your identity isn't up for auction every time someone gives you attention, because that's what most of us are doing, prostituting our self-worth for the hit of being seen, even if it's by someone who only looks at us when it's convenient. She breaks this cycle by doing something revolutionary. She dates herself, not like in a quirky, I took myself out for brunch kind of way. She commits, she shows up, she listens to her own needs. She builds a life that isn't just okay without someone else, it's thriving. So when someone does show up, they better be better than her piece, because anything less isn't love, it's disruption. You want to date with self-respect? Then stop calling chaos chemistry. Stop thinking he's just complicated when what he really is emotionally illiterate. Stop chasing the high of being wanted and start honoring the necessity of being respected. Love isn't supposed to make you question your worth. If it does, it's not love. It's addiction. Tam gets honest about the ways she used to abandon herself, shrinking to fit into someone else's fantasy, being agreeable to avoid being alone, mistaking validation for affection. She talks about how she had to unlearn all the bullshit fairy tales that told her value was in being chosen. And she doesn't just tell you to stop doing it. She shows you what it means to build a relationship with yourself that's so sacred, anyone who enters it knows they're walking into a temple, not a project. This isn't about being hard to love. It's about making love a privilege, not a rescue mission. You're not here to be fixed. You're not here to be saved. You're here to be seen, fully. And if someone doesn't have the depth to do that, let them drown in the shallow end alone. Dating with self-love means walking away the second someone shows you who they are and it doesn't align with who you're becoming. It means keeping your standards even when you're lonely. It means knowing that a relationship should add to your life, not become your life. And here's the hard part. It means you might be alone longer. You might have fewer dates. You might have more nights where it's just you and your own company. But guess what? That's not punishment. That's pruning. That's clearing space so when the right person shows up, you're not too full of fear and fakeness to recognize them. What Tam is really doing is teaching you how to stop outsourcing your love story. You are not the side character. You are not the damsel. You are not the sequel. You are the whole damn story. And when you live like that, dating becomes a choice, not a need, a compliment, not a cure. Key takeaway. If dating costs you your self-worth, your peace, or your standards, it's too expensive. You're not just the love of your life. You are the foundation of it. Build accordingly. Favorite quote: "The love of my life was never out there. She was always in the mirror, waiting for me to stop settling." Conclusion. You know what the real problem is? Most people don't hate their life. They hate who they've become inside of it. They don't need a new job, a new relationship, or a new wardrobe. They need a funeral for the version of themselves that keeps betraying their worth. The version that says yes when it wants to scream no. The version that keeps settling for attention in the absence of love. The version that keeps outsourcing their peace to other people's validation. Tam didn't write this book to make you feel good. She wrote it to make you honest. She didn't give you rituals and reflections because she thinks healing is cute. She gave them to you because healing is war. because you're in a daily battle against your old self, your bad habits, your toxic programming, and that soft voice in your head that says, you're not enough. This book is your weapon. Every section, every page, every brutal piece of truth in this book points to one thing. You are not broken. You are buried under guilt, shame, comparison, trauma, and everyone else's expectations. And this is your permission slip to stop living like a watered down version of yourself. Tam doesn't just hand you advice, she hands you a mirror. And what you do with that mirror, that's your responsibility. Are you going to keep looking away because the reflection is uncomfortable? Or are you finally going to face it and say, I'm done apologizing for being me. If anything in this book hit you, even one page, then you owe it to yourself to read the full thing. Because what you just heard, it's just the beginning. It's the spark. But the fire? That's in the pages. Buy the book. Read it with a pen. Rip out the parts that make you mad. Reread the ones that make you cry. Mark the lines that feel like home. Because this isn't just a self-help book, it's a survival guide. And here's the truth. No one's coming to save you, but you can still be saved by the version of you that's waiting on the other side of radical self-respect, unapologetic boundaries, and the kind of love that starts in the mirror. So go buy the book, not because Tam needs the sale, but because you need the wake-up call.